to realign, rethink, and recommission your church's online vision. And this is something we all need to do, because the reality is that online is changing things, and we're not going back to what we used to do. And online is going to be an integrated part of our strategy. It's going to look a lot like what we used to do, but with some new tools and new kind of, things in our tool belt. And we need to understand that this new paradigm. And so first, we need to realign our expectations. What I mean by that is that there's going to be high views and high losses. You're going to be able to reach a ton of people, but you're also going to see a lot of people drop off pretty quickly. And that's just because of the nature of the platform. People tend to be pretty straightforward with, if they're not interested in your content, they're going to bail. And so you can have tons of exposures and on Facebook views and YouTube views and clicks on different things, but you're going to go, wait, why aren't more people filling out this? Or why aren't we having people sign up for this? Well, people are going to be pretty honest if they like what you're doing. And so just understand this is part of this platform, that there's no friction, meaning that people can just join in and click out very quickly. And one of the examples I think of is looking at ESPN, what they've struggled with. ESPN, even if you're not a sports fan, they kind of grew off of the tidal wave of cable. It was the idea is that they got subsidized by cable packages as ESPN grew, and as cord cutters left, people weren't as interested, and they've been losing millions of people every year, and they've had to rethink their strategy of why do people watch their channel. And so people were watching them for SportsCenter and also for live content, and they had to kind of reprioritize, and they took big swings with ESPN Plus, with stuff like that. They were doing I think they still are doing something on Snapchat, a show just on Snapchat, and they got some talent for that. They also did something with High Noon. It was a show that ended up canceling, and they're taking big swings. One of the things was they're going to be going back to standardizing SportsCenter. They're starting to unleash their personalities to be more a little bit of Wild Wild West type of thing on digital. They used to not allow their people to be political, but now they're leaning in that way, and they're just starting to test things out. And I bring up the SportsCenter kind of example because this was somebody that was a behemoth in kind of the media industry, and they've had to lean into this new phase of what does digital look like? What does it look like to have a channel that is big, but also leaning into digital? Because their moneymaker was their cable providers. And digital, even though it was a huge growth opportunity, it was very different. And so what does it look like to grow both at the same time? And your church is feeling this. Your moneymaker, or the thing that made sense, was people showed up and you had a captive audience. Where digital, you can reach a ton of eyeballs, but it's harder to keep those people captivated because they're not there. They're not captive by sitting in your room. And so realign expectations. You can reach a ton of people, but you're also going to have a high drop off, and you need to think through how do you actually get those people engaged. And so really think about digital as a long strategy. What does it really look like to realign expectations or rethink this entire thing you're doing online? You need to rethink engagement online, because online is going to be a first contact for people that have never experienced your church. The idea is that you don't have to wait for people to come to you. You can actually go to them in a lot of creative ways. And also, it's a companion, a digital pathway for your members, meaning that as we go back to meeting in person, guess what? Online will still be there. And I believe that online could be a huge amplifier for learning and engagement for your members, but it's going to look different, and it's going to be a both and approach. I think about this with schooling. A lot of people have learned over the last 6 months that, guess what? Online only learning isn't that great. It needs to be combined with in person. This has been true with schools. We want people and our students to be trained in person because that's a better experience. And when they've just left to just Zoom type of connections with their teachers, there's gaps. And so the idea is that you need a both and approach. And so as you meet back in person, yes, you're still, when we can meet back in person fully, you're gonna do that, but you're gonna need to have a companion type of digital engagement. And this is something we need to rethink. And part of this has been figured out. Some of it hasn't. I kind of think of it as kind of the thing on democracy. The idea is when America got started, it was a great experiment. And every president that came into power continued to define what democracy was going to be like. Was it going to be a republic? Was it going to be a democratic? All the things that we still are wrestling with today. And that was the fun part of it, was we were defining it, and presidents got to define it, and next presidents got to kind of rein it back in or maybe expand it. The same things with this online hybrid type of approach. Don't feel like there is a model you can go copy and paste. There's not. You got to figure out, what does this mean for your unique church culture and the community you're reaching. Think about how to create on-ramps and temporary type of experiences. Look at really dream about what does it look like to have a tool, maybe it's a website or an app, that is not just about streaming content, but it's about providing a tool, a companion on their online learning type of kind of journey. And so maybe it's not just, hey, we're going to do this event, we're going to do it in person, but hey, we're going to do it in person. If you missed it, there's this online tool. But that thing, there are resources that have been created that you can go look at. I think of tools like what Church Home has done. You can go kind of look at other people that have tried to solve this problem, some good, some bad. Subsplash has done some things. I think of Pro Church Tools with some of those things they've done with some of their websites. Again, I don't think that there's a perfect model for what you're trying to do, but you need to rethink from bottom up what you're trying to do. And so again, this is a long-term strategy, but rethink engagement. It's not just about 1 hour a week, but it's about all the hours throughout the week. And what does that look like to really train and disciple and come along somebody for success? Then lastly, you need to recommission your ministry. And the idea is that you can do more with less with your online strategy. And I think a lot of churches have started to realize this, that maybe it took 3 volunteers and to do something in person, but when you do it online and it's centralized resources, kind of, think about it federally versus, on a state level, is that you don't need as many people. And so the idea is that that people consider your church their church, not just because they keep a seat warm on Sunday, but it's because they're investing their time, they're serving, you're empowering them. I think this is something that makes specifically the Protestant churches very unique, and especially evangelical churches, is that we believe in the priesthood of all believers. We empower people. It's not just people on the stage that are serving. It's everybody. We are the church. And traditionally this is done by, empowering people to be part of the kids ministry, people being greeters, leading small groups, praying for people, actually doing all the things that call church, and people are empowered and it becomes their church. And guess what? When that happens, they are engaged more. They share their faith more, because it's not just your church who's on staff, it's their church because they're invested in it. And I think one of the issues that has kind of popped up is when you can do more with less, that means less people are engaged, meaning that leads to a domino effect. Less people share their faith less, and so forth. And so you need to recommission your members, your ministries, everybody, to kind of figure out, how do you get the same amount of people serving pre-COVID, during COVID, and post-COVID? What are the new ministries that need to get started in this season? And how do you get as many people and more people engaged in ministry? This is really important. So thinking through, maybe you had a greeter ministry, pre-COVID, where they would serve and you had people in front of your church and they would welcome people. Well, maybe online season, those are the people that become chat hosts in the Facebook chat, or maybe they're a digital receptionist where they're answering questions on your website. There's all sorts of creative things that you can think through. One of the things that we started to think through is we had less people filling out first-time cards. And so what happened is people weren't checking this box in a form because they were texting us. And so we weren't getting this special extra field, because when people fill out large forms online, there's more likely they're going to check more boxes. But when they just text this number, they're making one step. So we didn't have first-time visitors. And so one of the ideas that got brought up was this idea is like, well, what if we follow up with new text numbers to our database as first-time visitors? And that was a shift in thinking about online. And then we have those people get an automated email or an automated text, and then we have a group of people, volunteers, that call those people and check in if they're connected to our church. Again, this is all unique to how you do church, but you got to recommission your ministry. You got to get people engaged, and you got to think about new ways for them to serve and use their gifts so that it is their church, and that leads to a kind of a domino effect where they'll get engaged and share their faith, and numbers will go up. So you got to realign expectations, what online looks like for your church. You got to rethink engagement in this season moving forward, and you got to recommission ministry. We all have to do these things because online is here to stay, but how you make it work for your church is going to look differently. I'm going to encourage you, it's going to be a both and. In person is still super valuable, but online can come alongside and do some really cool things. And I want to encourage your church to dream together. Think about what are some solutions and invest in those solutions the same way as you would invest in a building. Online is going to be vital moving forward for your church.